ankle boot. Oh, Jacob Fatu.
Jacob Fatu, Drew McIntyre, new champion. And
the Blue brand was electric on this particular Friday night, January 14th, 2026, as thousands of fans filled the arena for another episode of WWE Smackdown. The energy was palpable, the kind of atmosphere that only live wrestling can create, where anticipation hangs in the air like a physical presence. Nobody in attendance could have predicted that they were about to witness one of the most shocking returns in recent WWE history. A moment that would send shockwaves through the entire wrestling world and leave the WWE universe absolutely stunned. SmackDown had been building its own momentum over the past several months, with storylines intersecting and colliding in ways that created must-see television week after week. The show had established itself as a cornerstone of WWE's programming, delivering compelling matches and dramatic segments that kept fans invested and returning every Friday night. But nothing in recent memory could prepare the audience for what was about to unfold, for the violence that was about to be unleashed, for the return of a man who had been conspicuously absent from WWE television for far too long. Drew McIntyre had been on an absolute tear lately, cutting through the SmackDown roster like a Scottish wrecking ball. The former WWE champion had been vocal about his intentions to reclaim championship gold, delivering promos filled with intensity and purpose that reminded everyone why he's considered one of the most formidable competitors in all of professional wrestling.
top rope jump, will jump, come on, 1, 2.
His physical presence alone is intimidating, standing tall and muscular, with a look in his eyes that suggests he's always one moment away from unleashing violence upon anyone who crosses his path. On this particular night, McIntyre had been scheduled for an in-ring segment, one of those interview segments that WWE uses to allow its top stars to address the audience directly and advance their storylines. The Scottish Warrior made his entrance to a massive reaction from the crowd, his theme music thundering through the arena as he strode down the ramp with that characteristic confidence and intensity. He was dressed for a fight, not in his ring gear, but in street clothes that somehow made him look even more dangerous, more ready to explode at a moment's notice. McIntyre climbed into the ring and grabbed a microphone, the crowd settling into that anticipatory silence that precedes a major promo. He began speaking in that distinctive Scottish accent, his voice carrying weight and authority as he discussed his plans, his ambitions, his frustrations with the current state of SmackDown. He talked about respect, about earning opportunities rather than having them handed out, about proving himself time and time again only to be overlooked or disrespected. The passion in his voice was genuine, his words connecting with the audience on a visceral level. The promo was building towards something significant. You could feel it in the atmosphere of the arena. McIntyre was pacing the ring like a caged animal, his intensity increasing with every sentence, his frustration becoming more and more apparent. He spoke about obstacles in his path, about people who had tried to hold him back, about his determination to overcome anything and anyone who stood between him and his goals. The crowd was eating it up, responding to every statement with cheers and chants of support. But then something happened that nobody saw coming. The arena lights suddenly cut out, plunging the entire venue into complete darkness. The crowd's reaction was immediate, a mixture of confusion and excitement at this unexpected development. The darkness lasted for several seconds, long enough for uncertainty to build, for people to start wondering what was happening. Then a new sound began to fill the arena, a deep, pounding rhythm that nobody immediately recognized, but that carried an undeniable sense of menace and power. The lights came back up, but they were different now, bathed in red, giving the entire arena an eerie, dangerous atmosphere. And there, standing at the top of the entrance ramp, was a figure that made the entire arena erupt into absolute chaos. Jacob Fatu had returned to WWE. The Samoan werewolf was back, and his presence alone was enough to send shockwaves through every single person in attendance. Jacob Fatu is not like other wrestlers. His reputation precedes him, built on years of absolutely devastating performances on the independent circuit and brief, but memorable appearances in major promotions. He carries himself with an aura of legitimate danger, the kind of performer who makes you believe that the violence he's capable of inflicting is very real. Standing there at the top of the ramp, his massive frame silhouetted against the red lights, he looked like something out of a nightmare, a force of nature that had been unleashed upon the WWE roster. The crowd's reaction was deafening, a mixture of shock, excitement, and genuine concern for what was about to happen. Social media immediately exploded, with fans who weren't even watching the show getting notifications and rushing to tune in. The trending topics on Twitter shifted instantly, with Jacob Fatu's name rocketing to the top of the charts within seconds. This wasn't just a surprising return, this was a seismic event in the wrestling world. Drew McIntyre stood in the center of the ring, microphone still in hand, his expression transformed from passionate intensity to something more complex. There was recognition there, certainly. There was also calculation, the wheels turning in his mind as he processed this unexpected development. But there was no fear in McIntyre's eyes, only a kind of grim acceptance that something violent was about to occur. The Scottish warrior has never been one to back down from a fight, regardless of who stands across from him. Fatu began his walk down the entrance ramp, and it wasn't a rush or a sprint. It was a slow, methodical approach, the kind of walk that speaks to absolute confidence and control. Every step was deliberate, calculated, building tension with each footfall. His eyes never left McIntyre, locked on the Scottish warrior with an intensity that was almost frightening. The red lighting cast strange shadows across his face, making him look even more menacing, even more dangerous than usual. The commentators at ringside were scrambling to provide context, to explain to viewers what they were witnessing. They talked about Jacob Fatu's incredible career outside of WWE, his reputation for brutality and innovation in the ring, his family lineage as part of the legendary Anoa'i wrestling dynasty. They speculated about why he was here, what his intentions were, and what this meant for the future of Smackdown. But even as they spoke, you could hear the genuine excitement and concern in their voices, the realization that they were calling something truly special. McIntyre didn't wait in the ring like a sitting duck. That's not his style, never has been. As Fatu approached the ring, the Scottish warrior rolled under the bottom rope and stepped onto the floor, positioning himself to meet this threat head-on rather than allowing himself to be cornered. The microphone had been dropped and forgotten, no longer relevant now that physical confrontation was imminent. This wasn't about words anymore. This was about violence, pure and simple. The two men faced each other on the outside of the ring, separated by perhaps 10 feet of space. The tension was absolutely electric, the entire arena holding its collective breath waiting for the first move. Both men were massive, both carried reputations as legitimate tough guys, both had proven time and again that they were capable of incredible violence. This wasn't going to be a wrestling match with rules and structure. This was going to be a fight, raw and brutal and potentially ugly. Fatu made the first move, closing the distance between them with explosive speed that seemed impossible for a man his size. His shoulder drove into McIntyre's midsection, the impact echoing through the arena as both men crashed backward into the barricade. The crowd in that section scrambled back, giving the two behemoths room to wage their war. Security personnel appeared at ringside, but they maintained their distance, clearly uncertain about how to handle a situation involving two men of this caliber. McIntyre responded with heavy forearms to Fatu's back, clubbing blows that would have dropped most men. But Fatu seemed to absorb the punishment, his body taking the shots and continuing to drive forward with relentless aggression. He grabbed McIntyre and whipped him toward the ring steps, the metallic crash of the Scottish warrior's body impacting the steel resonating throughout the venue. The steps separated from their base, sent flying by the force of the collision. But McIntyre is nothing if not resilient. He's built a career on his toughness, his ability to absorb punishment and keep coming forward. He pulled himself up using the ring apron, shaking his head to clear the cobwebs, and turned back toward Fatu with fire in his eyes. The Samoan werewolf was already charging again, but this time McIntyre was ready. He sidestepped and used Fatu's momentum against him, sending the big man crashing into the ring post with a sickening thud. The fight spilled around the ringside area, both men trading brutal shots with seemingly no regard for their own safety or well-being. They crashed through the announce table area, scattering commentators and sending equipment flying. They battled up the entrance ramp, each trying to gain an advantage over the other. The crowd was on their feet, phones raised to capture every moment of this incredible brawl, voices hoarse from screaming their reactions to each devastating move. Security finally attempted to intervene, a swarm of officials trying to separate the two warriors. But it was like trying to stop a force of nature. Both McIntyre and Fatu shrugged off the security personnel like they were nothing, so focused on destroying each other that the attempts at intervention were barely acknowledged. It took what seemed like dozens of officials, referees, and backstage personnel to finally create some separation between the two men. Even as they were pulled apart, both McIntyre and Fatu continued to strain against the human barriers holding them back, reaching for each other, trying to break free and continue their assault. The hatred between them was palpable, genuine seeming in its intensity. McIntyre was shouting something, his face red with exertion and rage, while Fatu remained more stoically furious, his eyes never leaving the Scottish warrior even as he was forced backward up the ramp. The crowd was absolutely losing their minds, the noise level reaching a crescendo that threatened to drown out everything else. Chants broke out, some for McIntyre, some for Fatu, others just expressing their amazement at what they had witnessed. This wasn't your typical WWE return segment. This was something rawer, more violent, more intense than the usual formula. It felt real in a way that many wrestling angles struggled to achieve, that perfect blend of worked storyline and genuine intensity. As order was finally restored and both men were separated to different areas of the arena, the cameras caught the aftermath. McIntyre was breathing heavily, his shirt torn, visible marks and welts already forming from the brutal exchange. His expression was a mixture of anger and something that might have been respect, the look of a warrior who had just encountered a worthy opponent. He pointed toward the back, toward where Fatu had been taken, and you could read his lips forming words that suggested this was far from over. The remainder of Smackdown felt almost like an afterthought compared to what had just occurred. Every segment that followed existed in the shadow of Fatu's return and the brutal brawl that had ensued. Commentators kept referencing it, showing replays from multiple angles, trying to analyze what it meant for the future of the Blue brand. Backstage interviews were conducted with other wrestlers, getting their reactions to what had transpired, and the responses ranged from shock to excitement to concern about what this meant for the Smackdown locker room. Social media was an absolute meltdown. Wrestling Twitter, which is always active during Smackdown, was moving at a pace that made it almost impossible to keep up with all the reactions and commentary. Trending topics were dominated by Jacob Fatu's name, by references to the brawl, by speculation about what came next. Wrestling journalists were scrambling to provide context and analysis, with some claiming they had inside information about why Fatu had returned and targeted McIntyre specifically. The international wrestling community also took notice. Fans in Japan, Europe, Mexico, and all over the world were sharing clips and reacting to what they had seen. Jacob Fatu's reputation was global, built on performances for promotions around the world, and his arrival in WWE was seen as a major acquisition for the company. The fact that his return was executed with such impact and violence only added to the excitement and anticipation for what would come next. Wrestling podcasts immediately began recording emergency episodes to discuss the return. Hosts and analysts debated the storytelling implications, speculated about potential matches, and discussed how Fatu would fit into the existing SmackDown roster dynamics. Some pointed out the family connection between Fatu and other members of the Anoa'i family already in WWE, wondering if this would lead to some kind of faction warfare or alliance. Others focused purely on the in-ring potential, discussing dream matches and feuds that could emerge from this development. The wrestling media websites were flooded with articles within hours. Every major outlet had multiple pieces covering different angles of the story. There were the straight news reports detailing what had happened. There were analysis pieces discussing the broader implications for WWE's programming. There were historical retrospectives on Jacob Fatu's career and his family legacy. There were even some mainstream sports outlets picking up the story, recognizing it as a significant development in sports entertainment. What made this return particularly impactful was the element of surprise. In the modern wrestling landscape, where spoilers and leaked information are commonplace, genuine surprises are rare. WWE had managed to keep Fatu's return completely secret, with no reliable reports of his signing or planned debut leaking beforehand. This made the moment feel even more special, even more shocking, because nobody saw it coming. The gasps and reactions from the live crowd were genuine expressions of surprise, not manufactured responses to something they had read about online days earlier. The choice to have Fatu immediately target Drew McIntyre was also brilliant from a storytelling perspective. McIntyre is established as one of SmackDown's top stars, a former world champion with credibility and fan support. Having Fatu attack him immediately positioned the Samoan werewolf as a serious threat, someone willing to go after the biggest names on the roster right from the start. It avoided the typical pattern of having a returning or debuting wrestler work their way up through smaller feuds before eventually facing top talent. This was a statement that Jacob Fatu had arrived and was coming for everyone. The physical nature of the brawl also set a tone for what fans could expect from Fatu's WWE run. This wasn't going to be about technical wrestling exhibitions or lengthy mat classics. Fatu's style is more about power, impact, and an aura of legitimate danger. The brawl showcased those qualities perfectly, giving viewers a taste of the kind of violence and intensity that Fatu brings to his performances. It was a perfect introduction for casual fans who might not have been familiar with his work outside of WWE. The red lighting during Fatu's entrance was a particularly effective production choice. It immediately created a distinct atmosphere, separating this moment from typical SmackDown segments. The red gave everything a hellish, nightmarish quality that matched Fatu's persona as the Samoan werewolf. It's these kinds of production details that can elevate a moment from good to great, creating a complete package of sight, sound, and emotion that resonates with viewers on multiple levels. Drew McIntyre's reaction to the attack also deserves recognition. Rather than playing the victim or seeming genuinely hurt by the assault, he fought back with intensity and showed that he viewed Fatu as a challenge to be overcome rather than a threat to be feared. This protected McIntyre's character and credibility while still allowing Fatu to look dominant and dangerous. It's a delicate balance that's not always achieved successfully, but in this case, both men came out of the segment looking strong and compelling. The crowd reaction throughout the segment cannot be overstated. Their genuine shock at Fatu's appearance, their excitement during the brawl, their sustained energy even as officials tried to restore order, all of it contributed to the moment feeling like something truly special. Wrestling is always better with a hot crowd, and this SmackDown audience delivered in every possible way. Their energy fed the performers and created an atmosphere that translated even through television screens to viewers watching at home. As the show went off the air, the final image was of Drew McIntyre standing in the ring, staring up the ramp toward the back where Jacob Fatu had disappeared. The Scottish warrior's expression was intense, focused, already planning his response to this unexpected attack. It was the perfect closing shot, leaving viewers with questions and anticipation about what would happen next, when these two would meet again, and what kind of destruction would result from their next encounter. The wrestling world spent the rest of the night and well into the next day dissecting every aspect of what had occurred. Frame-by-frame analysis of the brawl was posted online, with fans examining every punch, every impact, every expression on the faces of both competitors. Speculation about the storyline reasons for Fatu's attack ran rampant, with various theories gaining traction depending on what information people thought they had or what made the most narrative sense. Some theorized that Fatu's attack was motivated by a desire to make an immediate impact and establish himself as a top-tier threat on SmackDown. Others suggested there might be deeper storyline reasons, perhaps involving family connections or past history between the characters. A few conspiracy theorists even suggested that Fatu might be aligned with some other faction or individual on the roster, using McIntyre as a message to the entire locker room. The potential matches that could emerge from this development excited fans tremendously. A singles match between Fatu and McIntyre promised to be an absolute war, a physical battle between two of the most intense and powerful performers in WWE. There was also speculation about whether this could evolve into something larger, perhaps involving other members of the Anoa'i family in WWE, or expanding to include other top Smackdown stars who might align with one side or the other. From a business perspective, Fatu's return was perfectly timed. WWE was building toward its next major premium live event, and this development immediately created a marquee match possibility that hadn't existed before. The promotional material practically wrote itself: the Samoan werewolf versus the Scottish warrior in a clash of two of wrestling's most intense and physical competitors.